Welcome back. This is review 16C, following on from 16B where I discussed blended malts. That itself following on from 16A where I reviewed this Smoking Islay from Blackadder, bottled at 59.5%, and it's possibly Killilla but maybe Ardbeg. Don't quite know, but what I do know is it's very intense on the peat hit. I'm going to be comparing it to the winner of the public vote, so thank you very much for voting. And the winner is this one. It is the Ballechin 19-year-old fully manzanilla cask matured, a mix of 3 casks, bottled in July 2023 at 55% alcohol. And yeah, I put this up for option on the vote because I thought if it was chosen, it'd be very interesting to try an older, intensely peated Highland whiskey, which keeps its peat intensity even as it gets quite a lot older. Tend to find that with Ballechin's in most cases, not all but most, it keeps its level of intensity well into its teens basically, and probably beyond. I think the oldest Ballechin I've had is 20 years old, and it was a port cask one that's pretty intense as well. So I'm TheWhiskyAnorak, and yeah, welcome to my channel. You might notice I have a special co-star today, which is this fan here, because currently in the UK it is we're having a bit of a heat wave and it's getting up to about 36 degrees. And yeah, we don't have aircon, so yeah, hence the fan. So hopefully you can't hear it. I think there's some noise cancelling on this microphone, so hopefully you won't be able to hear it too much. So I'm just going to pour a little bit of these, not too much because it is a hot day and I don't want to get dehydrated. So I'm going to have a massive drink of water after I've done this. So yeah, there's not very much in there at all, just a little bit. I'm taking my time with this one, and I'll explain why in a little bit. So whilst it's opening up then, anything that I want to say about this Ballechin, just to give you a few more details before I start the comparison. I've told you about what's in the bottle, but like I alluded to in one of the previous videos, you know, this is still available on Edgedoor's website. If you wanted to buy it, you could purchase it right now, and I'm considering doing that, such as the quality of some of these fully, you know, sherry matured or different types of fortified wine matured Ballechin's. I find it really works well with the heavily peated spirit that they produce there. And you know, if this was Springbank, it wouldn't have lasted seconds on the website, but it's still there 3 years later, which, you know, given the quality of this, I mean, things like that to me just sort of tell you how a lot of the success of Springbank is obviously due to the quality of what they produce, but the unavailability of it is partly due to hype, that everyone wants it to try it. But I'm okay with that because I also love Springbank. But I think sometimes people are missing out on absolute banger whiskies because they're just looking at Springbank. And yeah, I think that, you know, if you broaden your horizons, you can discover some gems which the quality is just as good at Springbank, if not better. So yeah, that's just my opinion on that. Some great Ballechin bottlings on there. There's another one, a Madeira cask one, which is absolutely great as well. There is a couple of port cask ones out there, fully matured. I've actually got 2 of those. I've got one that was matured in a port pipe, so that's a big whopping cask, pretty much the biggest you can get legally in the Scotch whisky industry, very big cask. And I've got one that was matured in an export hogshead. And the difference between those, even though I think the hogshead one is a bit younger at 18 versus the 20-year-old port pipe one, the 18-year-old is going on 24, to be honest, whereas the 20-year-old sort of seems its age. But anyway, what I'm going to do this time then, oh, by the way, you might have noticed as well, there isn't a third bottle. What I normally do is I choose a bottle myself because I definitely, in most cases, want to compare the bottle to a bottle of my choosing. Something usually sticks out to me. This is the first time that it's not really with this one, and I thought I'd just put up 3 bottles to the vote, and any one of them would be great to compare. So that's why there's only 2 this time. There's normally 3. On the next series of reviews, I won't say what it is yet, but there won't be a public vote because I've already got 2 solid other bottles that I want to compare the subject of 17A to, and that will become apparent after you see what it is. So yeah, anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to smell it. I'm going to give you the sensations, the texture, and the taste notes. I'm going to add water. I'm going to do the same, and that will pretty much be that. So as you may know from this channel, I don't go too in depth with the smell and taste notes because I don't want to sort of I don't want to influence you too much. Also, I find it to be the least interesting part of a review. I just want to know the basic smell and taste notes. I don't need 30 or 40 different descriptors, because we all know, don't we, that when reviewers do that, that what we smell and taste is usually completely different. So I try and keep it a bit more basic and a bit less self-indulgent if I can. So with that said, let's indulge into this whiskey. Well, that's a bad segue, wasn't it? Yeah, I'm going to smell the Blackadder first, just to remind ourselves from 16A. So, intensely peaty, but it's like a, yeah, it's like a sweet peat. But behind that, there's a, wow, there is a smoky intensity to this, which is just, it's gorgeous. But it's also quite buttery on the nose as well, to be completely honest. Initial impression, as per the review as well, is you're not accessing that much beyond the peat initially. It needs that water to really get to some of the fruity notes, because there is fruit in the background here, but it's hard to access it when you've got all that phenolic, all those phenolic compounds coming off it. Sensations: salty, very sour, touch bitter, slightly savoury, but apart from a tiny touch of sweetness at the start, not much sweetness at all. It's salty, sour are the predominant sensations here. The texture, I'd say it's quite oily, to be honest. Oily and creamy, like a medium to high level of oiliness. It coats the mouth. There's no obvious heat, a little bit at the back towards the middle, but it's nothing that makes me think that it's young spirit. I think it's been matured very well in the cask that it's been for its 11 years. I should do the I'll just do all the notes for this one first, and then I'll do that, and then we'll do a bit of a comparison. So the taste for this, wow, intense peat. Reminds me of just basically taking a spoon of ash, tasting it. It's very raw, coal tar, vegetal phenolic. It's there is some fruit there. There's a little bit of apple, which I tend to get quite a lot from whiskies. There's some citrus as well, but it's very much dominated by the peat and the smoke, as per the name. Okay, so that's the notes for that one. Let me go into this one, and I'll do a bit of a comparison on the nose as I go. And just to remind ourselves with this, manzanilla is a type of sherry that is basically produced in a coastal region. It's pretty much the same as Fino, which means that it's biologically aged under a layer of floor. So it's a layer of yeast that forms on the top, which means that there's a limited exposure to oxygen of the maturing sherry. And that layer of floor remains throughout the full maturation. Whereas if you had a sherry like Amontillado, that starts off under the floor and then deliberately for alcohol is added, high strength alcohol, to bring the level of the alcohol ABV up, and that kills the floor. So Amontillado is partially matured under floor and then partially oxidatively aged as well. You've got Ballechin, which is very similar, apart from it happens by accident. And then you have the fully oxidatively aged sherries such as PX and Oloroso. Just to give you a brief rundown, I have done an episode all about sherry. If you look back at some of the episodes, you'll see that there's one just on sherry, and I go into that in a bit more detail. So on the nose for this Ballechin 19-year-old manzanilla matured whiskey, salty, toffee, intense peat, but it's deeper. It seems deeper set into the whiskey. It's very, very salty, and that's a perfect combination, I think, with peat, is that saltiness that you're getting from the manzanilla, which is like Fino, but it has a few coastal elements like saltiness to it. You are getting that come through. There's not really that much sweetness on the nose. It's like a dry, tree barky sort of peat, really, like a ashy, sooty sort of peat. Let's just compare the nose directly to this. Yeah, this smells lighter on the peat for sure. Absolutely is. this is definitely more in your face than the Ballechin. More expressive initially, bit less expressive, bit more closed. I wouldn't describe it as closer, but just in comparison to this, it's more closed. The peat isn't as forward on this initially. Okay, so now let me give you the texture for this. Very oily, a touch creamy, no real heat, little touch towards the back as you'd expect. It is at 55%, but very, very well matured. But this whiskey just reminds me of almost like a fight between the cask, previous contents in particular, and the spirit. It's really, and I find Ballechin works really well when it's got something strong to push against. I don't like it as much when it's just in from a bourbon cask, and the same goes for Edredor as well, which is of course where this is made. I find that it's better with sherry or with a stronger previous cask content, so that the spirit, which is a bit rough when it's younger, has something to fight against over the years. That's how I think it's best. I have got a couple of bourbon expressions, and they're great, but I just don't think they have that complexity that you get when it's put in an active, you know, a cask that previous contents are very actively engaging with the spirit, rather than complementing it like in ex-bourbon. So, sensations for this. Yeah, salty, bitter, not too sour. There's some savoury there, absolutely, quite differently from this. Not so much sweet either. Okay, so let me give you the taste notes. Wow. There's a salty grape note. It's like a savoury caramel, salty caramel. It's very coastal. And then after that initial saltiness, you're getting like a woody, ashy, sooty note in your mouth. It's quite interesting, but again, it's not the most expressive yet. You know, it's 19 years old, and it's, you know, the bottle level isn't that far down, so it will take a bit of time to open up. And I suggest if you get it, leave it in the glass. I mean, really, you know, it's 19 years old, so leave it for about 20 minutes before you start to you know, access it. But what I'll do is, I've not got that much in there, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put about just over half a teaspoon into each, just a couple more drops there, okay, into each glass. And let's just, whilst that's open up, let's just have a little look there. I don't know if you'll be able to see that or not, but I can see the versimetry is very thick in that one. Let's have a look at the Ballechin. Yeah, also very, very thick indeed. Always a good sign. They do turn cloudy as well in normal circumstances when you add water. And the sediment in both of them, of course, in the Blackadder, as you can, you know, you can very clearly see. I'm sure you'll be able to see that just there. And the Ballechin as well doesn't have quite that level of particles in it, but they are definitely there. There's quite a lot of stuff swimming around there, which tells me that it's not been overly filtered. It does say on there that it's not chill filtered, I believe. Does it? Natural colour cask strength, right? It doesn't say not chill filtered, but it is not chill filtered, because you can tell by looking in the bottle that you've got sediment in there, which you just would not get if it was chill filtered. And you can also see that when you look through the bottle, you see it's got a slight haze to it, as does this, and that's always a great sign. If you see sediment in bottles, it is great. It won't do you any harm, and it's just a pure, obvious visual sign that you can see using your own senses without relying on what you're being told. You can see what's in that bottle for yourself, and if you do see fine sediment, it's even if it's not stated, it's pretty much a surefire way that you know that that hasn't been over filtered or passed through a chill filtration unit, which is an industrial unit which strips out oils and fats and hence flavour from whiskies, which is especially detrimental to peated whiskies, because, as I've discussed on previous episodes, phenolic compounds bind to fats and to alcohols, and they get dissolved into them. And if you take all those fats and oils out, there's less for the phenolics to grip onto, so it will be less potent. You'll have a lighter peat basically experience than if you did not filter the whiskey at all. So that's how I like my peated whiskies. I like all whiskies like that, but I think it's particularly important for peated whiskies where you want that intensity to come through. Okay, so now I've added water, and I would usually leave it at least 10 minutes before smelling, tasting again, but I'm trying to keep this to a schedule, of course. So let's smell both of these, and then I'll do the tasting again, the texture and stuff like that, and the sensations. Okay, so has it changed? Yes, it has changed already. Less intense on the peat. I am getting a bit of an orange, some citrus, like lime, lemon. That buttery sort of bonfire sooty smell is still there. It is salty, creamy. The peat is still the main event, but there are other notes coming out of there now. Now let's compare that to the Ballechin. Wow. It has there is a slight sulphurous note coming out of that now. It's not too much, but it's there. It's enough to notice. And I think it works really well with the sherry influence from the manzanilla as well, which is a lighter sherry. It's not heavy, it's lighter and salty. There's a lovely sweetness there, and I'm getting there's a little touch of melon. It's quite complex. If you add water to this slowly over the course of an hour or so, you will see different notes jump in and out. This is a lot more of not a basic experience, but it won't change as much in the glass over time. You will notice some additional fruit notes come out, but it's not like it's night and day. This one, you can put your nose to it every 10 minutes and smell completely different things. So it's a level, I'd say it's an order of magnitude ahead of this one in terms of the complexity range. And complexity to me just means that the smell and taste notes that you get change over time and with the addition of water to a high degree. But yeah, underlying that, there's just that sooty intensity, which is just so powerful, and it's enhanced by that saltiness, in my opinion, from that manzanilla. Yeah, very interesting. Right, let me wow. There's almost like a fruity pineapple note coming out of this now. You know, like a pineapple candy. There's a touch of mango there. Yeah, it's really starting to express itself a bit more. I don't know, because it's a bit hotter, so it's accelerated a bit quicker in terms of developing in the glass. But I didn't notice this so much on the when I did part A, to be fair. But yeah, there's definitely some juicy tropical fruit notes coming out of this one. Let's just one more little smell of this, and then I'll do the texture and the sensations and taste for the Smoking Islay. Wow, it's just like a sawdust, smoky sawdust log fire with an undercurrent of salty toffee, basically. Okay, so let's see if the sensations have changed for this one. You have a bit less salty, bit less sour, a bit less bitter. It's a bit less of everything in terms of it's not as intense as it was without the addition of water, but all of the sensations are still there. There is a little touch of savouriness now, which I wasn't getting before, and yeah, changed quite a bit. So let's now go on. The texture, by the way, is the same. Medium to heavily oily, I would say. Some creaminess. That little bit of heat that you get is probably even a little bit less now with the addition of water. Taste notes. Okay. So it's peaty, of course, still. That is the main event here. But there's a citrus. There's a bit of maltiness as well. I'm getting some oak coming through. It's some orange, bit of grapefruit. And you're left with an ashy peat note. So at the start and at the end is dominated by the peat, but now that I've added the water in the middle, you're getting some of those fruit notes coming out. So yeah, not the most complex whiskey, but if you want an intense peat hit, you're not going to go far wrong with this, to be fair. And the fact that it's completely unfiltered, pretty much apart from probably very loose barrier filtered, you're just getting more of those phenolic compounds in a heavy sort of way. So let's now just go back to the Ballechin, and then we'll close the video after we've tasted this again. Yeah, it's there's a note there, quite hard to put my finger on, but it's like an intense mix between the manzanilla saltiness and the peated Ballechin spirit. There is a bit of oak coming out as well now, but it's very much dominated by previous cask contents and the spirit, in my opinion. This expression is, there's a touch of oak, but it's definitely not dominant. So let's give you the sensations and then the taste. Sensations, sweeter. There's a touch of sweetness there with the salt at the start. It's a bit bitter. Not so much sour now, that's almost completely gone. And there is a savouriness that runs through it as well. It's, tend to find this with water. I've said it before, but when you add water, you tend to find the sensation range will be a bit more under control. It doesn't mean that the sensations disappear completely. Usually it just means that instead of being quite shocking and up and down, you tend to get it a bit more of a smoother experience in terms of the sensations flow a bit better, rather than sometimes you can get, extreme salt, extreme sour. When you add water, you tend to find that it melds together a little bit better in terms of sensations. So let's give you the taste notes for this, and then I'll do one last little smell comparison, and then that will be that. Like a smoky nut, like a almond, to be fair. Like I think I've had those before in the supermarket, where you get like smoked almonds. I'm getting a touch of that from there. Bonfire peat. There is some darker fruits there, like a little touch of raisin, not much. The main impact, I think, from the manzanilla is definitely the saltiness that it's conveying, and a little touch of a raisin / grape note to it. And let's see if we can see anything else from it. Yeah, there's like a leather, that sort of leather armchair sort of taste. Not that I lick leather armchairs very often, but that, sort of taste how that smells, if that makes sense. And it's definitely a bit milder with the peat now, but it still holds its own against this. The peat intensity here, considering it's 19 years of age, is quite impressive. It's not as raw as it would be as, say, like a 10-year-old. Of course it's not, but it still has that intensity. It's not like you're tasting this and thinking that peat's dropped off. It just feels like it's developed, if that makes sense. Like sometimes you have an older Islay and you think, oh yeah, that peat's sort of gone now, or an older, even say an older long grow. We've had a 21-year-old long grow, and that is a bit like that. It seems like the peat sort of dropped off. Here, similar age, 19 years old, I feel that it's still there with the intensity. It's holding it. I think I've had one expression which didn't seem to hold its intensity as much. I think it's a 17-year-old Burgundy cask matured, where it seems to be a lot more dominated by the previous cask contents. But every other bottling that I've had from Ballechin in older bottlings have still retained that peat intensity. So that's just good to know. So let's just smell these one last little time. Okay, this is definitely brighter now, a lot more fruit forward. This is actually getting heavier and smokier at the moment. Despite at the start this being completely peat dominated, it's actually coming out as quite a fruity note now. That peat has died off significantly, whereas here, although it has died off a little bit, it's still dominated by the peat, I would say. So that's going to be pretty much it in terms of that comparison. I hope that was useful for you. My co-star will only hopefully be here for this review. On the next review, it will just be me again in 17A, where I'm going to be taking a look at, it's going to be an Islay whiskey, but an unpeated Islay whiskey, which tells you that it's going to be one of 2 or 3, out of the Islay distilleries. But it's going to be an Islay whiskey, unpeated, and yeah, that's what's going to be coming up in part 17A. Be tuning for that. So thank you very much for watching this time. I really appreciate it. Where is my clicker? Here's my clicker. I will see you in part 17A. Goodbye for now.